Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so excited you are able to join us today. My name is Naomi Martin. I am a reporter that covers education at the Boston Globe. And today we're going to be talking about how remote learning is going and how students and families can be engaged, be interested, be motivated as this pandemic just drags on and on. I would love this conversation is being sponsored by the Ellie Mae Education Foundation, and I would like to invite Marcos to come and give us Marcos Popovich to come give us some opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Naomi, and good afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to be joining you this afternoon on behalf of the Ellie Mae Education Foundation. We're a funder based in Quincy, Massachusetts, and we're focused on advancing racial equity in public education throughout New England. We know that this year has been like no other for so many reasons. We have witnessed the deep inequities in our society laid bare by the two pandemics of COVID-19 and systemic racism. Educators have been forced to rapidly pivot to an entirely new system of learning. Parents are strained juggling work, childcare, and supporting their children through virtual learning. And our young people are adapting to a school year unlike any other they've ever experienced. So I feel so honored to be in conversation with our panelists today as we explore how virtual learning is going throughout the Boston area. And as we examine what's working, what's hard, and how we continue to keep what's best for our young people front and center. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll pass it back to Naomi.
Thank you so much, Marcos. So only one generation of students knows what it's like to go to school this way, and that's the kids that are in school right now. The changes and disruption to education that we've seen have been some of the most consequential impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. In Massachusetts, more than half of the state's 1 million public school students are learning fully remotely. Quality and quantity of instruction varies widely across the districts, and it's exacerbating pre-existing inequalities along lines of class, race, and disability status. And it carries major implications for students' careers, lives, and futures. As anyone who sits in Zoom meetings all day can tell you, staying interested and engaged is tough, even as an adult. Many young people and children are struggling to stay engaged, and their teachers and parents are trying to innovate and find ways to keep them motivated to learn. Trust and human connection are essential pieces of teaching and learning, but it's so hard to build those connections online. So I would like to invite our guests to turn their cameras on, if you guys don't mind, and I'll introduce who you are. So we have Xiomara Garcia. She is a mother of 2 children in Boston Public Schools, ages 9 and 14. Ada Martinez is her translator. Xiomara speaks Spanish. Xiomara, ¿puedes encender la cámara? Gracias. And Leah Antoinette Serena is a 2nd grade teacher at the Mather School in Dorchester. Jason Gallagher is a principal at the Harvard Kent School, which goes from kindergarten to 6th grade in Charlestown. And Christopher Taylor is a 7th grader at the John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science in Boston. And Michelle Bohar is a 10th grader at Newton South High School, which is coincidentally my alma mater. I forgot to tell you that.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Oh, yes.
I cannot turn it on because the co-host stopped my video. I cannot.
Okay, Mary, I think she can turn it back on. She may have forgotten to do that. Thank you, Xiomara.
Now.
Okay. Perfecto.
Hi.
Okay, just real quick to set the tone, Michelle Bohar wrote a terrific essay for us that ran today in our Great Divide newsletter, which we will be sending to all the participants after the panel. And so I just wanted to quickly read a quote from it because I think it really speaks to what a lot of students are feeling right now. I simply don't feel connected. I watch my classes as if they were a series on Netflix, each class an episode played just to fill the time. Without human connection, school is a shadow, a bare bones skeleton. Without human connection, there is little warmth and inspiration to help us learn. So thank you, Michelle, for writing such a beautiful essay for us. And with that, I'm going to ask, I'll just call on each of you one at a time. If you could just go around and talk about, now that we're in the eighth month of remote school, how is the experience going at this point, and how motivated and connected do you feel with the school? So why don't we start with Leah? How do you feel, I guess, your students and families are, in terms of their connection with your class and your school?
Good evening, everyone. So yes, I am Lan. I teach second grade at the Mather Elementary School. I do think that it is getting harder to engage students, but we are also getting used to it to a certain extent. I do have, on most days I have perfect attendance. My students are coming on time, even early, ready to engage in remote learning. My students are a little bit younger, so I think that sometimes that makes it a little bit easier to get them to want to come on, as this is their social interaction. But it is definitely different, and it's definitely hard, and we are definitely missing our students and colleagues during this time.
Christopher, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it's going for you? How motivated and interested are you in remote school at this point?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name's Chris Taylor, for those of you who may not know. I am a seventh grader, and for the most part, I've been mostly motivated in class. However, it has been a struggle knowing that we're not allowed to go outside as frequently as we used to. However, due to the following guidelines given by CDC, I do realize that we still must be safe even in these hard times.
And Michelle, can you talk about how you're feeling right now with regard to school, and how motivated or interested you are in your classes?
Of course. So I'm Michelle, and I think what Chris said is very true. We understand that we can't go outside and that things are very different now because we need to stay safe, but it can be hard to stay motivated when you can't connect to your peers and your teachers. And learning from your own home is very hard and very strange for a lot of people. So I think it can work, but it's a lot harder to stay engaged as time goes on.
Thank you. Ada, do you mind relaying the question to Xiomara, which is how her experience of remote learning is going right now? How connected does she feel with her kids' schools?
I did on the chat, but I will repeat it. Yes. ¿Qué tan conectada, Xiomara, te sientes tú como familia o tus hijos como estudiantes o motivados con el aprendizaje remoto?
En absoluto, al contrario, se sienten, no están motivados, no les gusta el método de enseñanza, no ha sido positivo para ellos.
I think that they actually don't feel motivated. They don't like it. They don't feel that it's working for them at this time.
Gracias, Xiomara. Jason, how do you feel it's going at this point with your school's families and trying to stay connected with the school from their homes?
Yeah, it's a good question, Naomi, and I appreciate hearing from parents and from students and teachers before talking. So I think what Michelle said, as a high school student at Newton South, probably is how 4-year-olds would even express how it feels to them if they could express it in such a way that Michelle did. But making the connection's a challenge. I think that we have a group of students and families at our school who have been amazingly resilient and are working hard to try to make the best of a situation that is out of their control. And we're really proud of the work that they're doing, and the same goes for the teachers. But it is really hard because a lot of us rely so much, the students, the teachers, the staff, we all rely on the social connection to make, to close gaps and to make sure that students are learning and that they have access to their friends. And it's been a real challenge. I think we feel like we're working hard and we're doing a good job, but there are a lot of ways that we could get better, and we want to see our kids back in school safely really soon.
Thank you so much. So Leah and Toinette, let's go go into the instruction a little bit. What techniques have you learned work well to keep your young students engaged online?
And my school, I think we have really been talking about less being more, and we are really trying to focus on how we can give them instruction in a way that is meaningful, virtually using many different online platforms, but also not overwhelming them. I think that earlier in the spring, when this was new to us, that we were like, what can we try? Let's try everything and try to figure this out. And now we're getting to the place where we are trying to keep consistency, but also like, I'm not going to give a I don't believe in worksheets like that anyways, but I'm not going to give a worksheet that has 20 problems. I'm going to really focus on these two because we're virtual, everything's taking longer. And I also think that it's just really important to see what students know, not necessarily to keep them having busy work. So that's really important to me for instruction, and also just really believing in how much like projects and hands-on activities can really support students at this age.
Yeah, I mean, you've sent home materials, or you had them come pick it up. Can you talk about what you were providing them and why that was important?
Yeah, so I did do lots of donations. I've received lots of donations for supplies. I had students pick up everything that you can imagine, from math manipulatives, so that they have blocks at home, so they have 10 base sticks at home, so they have rulers at home, they have papers, crayons, cloths, everything that we need, magnet letters, and I think that that has made a huge difference. I love when doing phonics with the students, when they hold up their magnet boards with their letters, I feel like they're more engaged. When they're using the whiteboard to show an answer, I feel like they're more engaged, that we can try to mimic some things that we would see in school. We're never going to be able to replace that environment, but this way I'm at least seeing some things hands-on firsthand. And, you know, I do think there is some uniqueness and creativity in the fact that I can see all 20 answers right close up at once and take quick notes to be able to drive my instruction.
Great, thank you. And Christopher, do you mind talking a little bit about what kinds of things have worked well to keep you interested in your classes online? Like what do some of your best teachers do that work really well?
Most of my teachers will try to find different ways to encourage kids to step out of their comfort zone a little bit. Sometimes we'll try to find activities that require students to work together and try to get to know each other throughout the process of the activities. Things like maybe virtual escape rooms, or trying to solve some complicated puzzle that requires more than one mind at a time to solve it.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. Thank you, Christopher. Michelle, what about you? What, you know, I know when we spoke earlier, you said sort of like breakout rooms really help, but they're not all great, right? So can you talk about what makes a good breakout room experience in terms of that small group?
Yeah, so for me personally, breakout rooms work a lot better when a teacher gives a bit more of a specific prompt. For example, like in English, he'll give us a few questions to talk about and to work through that relate to what we're doing, instead of just sending us into a breakout room and sort of saying, talk about this worksheet. I think when teachers give a more specific prompt that requires a bit more discussion, students are more likely to discuss and speak up. But if they just give a worksheet that doesn't really matter, or that isn't, it's sort of vaguer, it's a lot harder for students to participate and talk to each other.
And I know, like, I've heard this complaint from a lot of teachers that students aren't as sort of talkative online as they would be in person. Why do you think that is, Michelle? And then I'll ask Christopher too, like, yeah, what do you think's going on with that?
I think online you're a bit more self-conscious. A lot of people have mentioned how you can see yourself talking, so you're very aware of what you're doing. You're very aware that asking a question means that throughout everyone speaker, everyone can hear you. So it is a lot more awkward and uncomfortable. Also in class, it's a lot easier if you're sitting at a desk facing your teacher asking them a question, whereas on Zoom, you're looking at everyone's faces when you speak up. And so for students who are afraid to talk out in class in front of people, looking at every single person in front of them can be a lot more daunting.
And so Christopher, what can teachers do to try to get kids to participate more, turn their cameras on, ask more questions? Is there something that you feel like teachers could do to help kids feel more comfortable?
Sorry. I think teachers should try to look more on both perspectives. Yes, it is hard for the teachers. And kudos to them. They've been trying their absolute best, trying to encourage students every day to just get one step further to getting more comfortable to talking with other people on an online environment. And one thing that I would recommend is that you want to try to see what's going on in their life, to see what maybe they're struggling with or what they may need more help in.
Thank you, Christopher. Jason, what kinds of things have you seen your teachers do, or what kinds of directives have you given them in terms of making classes online more exciting or engaging?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can't say I've given any directives because the real honest answer to that is there's no expert. There was no expert on this when we started in March, and the teachers are now the experts on this. But it does amaze me every day when I go into teachers' classrooms virtually that they're trying new and innovative things to try to get as many kids engaged in learning as much as they possibly can. Whether it's being able to, demonstrate their writing and by posting to Google Classroom, or filming recording what they're saying in like the Seesaw app so that they can play what they're saying and have their students hear it that way. Teachers have just been really resilient with trying to find ways for their resilient students to provide all the answers that they can and to provide all the information that they can. And, it takes a lot of work. I know the amount of teacher planning that goes into it every day is pretty significant, but then also students are being more and more creative about how they're responding to a lot of the work. So it's a challenge, but, I think they're both really working hard at it.
Great. I'm going to try to ask Xiomara a question, Ada. Hopefully, are you connected with her?
Not yet. I am in the process, but you can make your question and I will interpret her. Okay,
perfect. So how does what would she like? What would she like to see? How does she feel it's going with her son's remote instruction in terms of what the teachers are doing, how they're doing the classes online?
¿Cómo te sientes con el aprendizaje remoto en términos de cómo el maestro está impartiendo la clase? ¿Cómo se sienten tus hijos?
En frustración, entiendo que no se dan las instrucciones que se requiere este método, solamente dan la clase por Zoom, no le dan a los niños ningún material para que estudien en la casa, para que los ayude con la tarea.
It's frustrating. They feel frustrated because I understand that teachers are given their classes online, but they're not instructing them properly as to how to do the work. They're not giving them the supporting material for these tasks to be completed.
And Xiomara, has your 9-year-old gotten any materials or supplies to take home the way that Leia was talking about she's given to her students? Like, have they gotten anything to bring home to work off of a screen?
Y Xiomara, ¿ha tenido a tu hijo de 9 años, ha obtenido algún tipo de materiales de parte de la escuela o de parte del maestro que lo apoyen en su aprendizaje?
Nada. Yo he tenido que interrumpir las clases porque no dan ninguna reunión para los padres. Yo estoy bien preocupada porque cuando mi hijo le toca hacer la tarea no tenemos ninguna guía de dónde dejarnos llevar.
No, nothing. I honestly had to interrupt many of the classes sometimes because teachers are not given enough information.
¿Me escucha? ¿Me escucha?
Te escuchamos.
Está bien ahora sí. Okay, Ada, do you mind just finishing up her thought?
I'm going to repeat what I
Okay.
said. They have not gotten anything. He has not gotten the basically the materials or the instructions that he needs to do his assignments. I had to interrupt sometimes, you know, his ongoing classes to ask the teacher for this sort of material or instruction.
Thank you. Gracias, Xiomara. So I don't know, you know, Jason, I know she doesn't go to, her kids don't go to your school, but as a principal, you know, do you have any thoughts on these concerns from parents just in terms of trying to get information about how their kids are doing? You know, how do you handle that at your school?
Yeah, it's a totally legitimate concern. You know, when listening to Leah speak a little bit earlier, she was talking about how she got things out to families and how that was a real priority for her. And, you know, at our school, we've made that a priority as well. You know, we actually just had parents at our school yesterday socially distancing with masks outside that we provided more materials for them. And it's not the first time we've done that this year. We have teachers who outside of our school have bins after bins of actually work that they've created for families who want the opportunity to turn the Zooms off a little bit and do some work in front of them rather than just online. And that's been successful for a lot of the classes who need to do that. It's like we have to think differently in how we could support parents in doing the work with kids at home, because it's really, really hard. And it's not normal. I know we hear people say the new normal, but the new normal is not for kids to sit in front of a screen from 9 to 4. It's not. The new normal is that we have to provide opportunities for kids online to learn, but they have to be able to turn that screen off and practice some of those skills independently at home. And as teachers and as educators, we rely on parents to help us with that. So we've had some success with that, but we know we have a long ways to go to get better. So, you know, when hearing Xiomara talk about like that, it breaks my heart because we know it is challenging for families, and we do everything we can to get things out to our families, but it's really hard.
Thank you, Jason. Leah, I know you guys were very intentional this year in sort of creating your classrooms because you knew how hard it was going to be being remote from the spring. Can you talk about what you guys did and how you continue to stay engaged with your students' families?
Yes. So in my grade level, we were very intentional about rearranging our class list from what we had thought before, just given the situation. One thing that was really important to me is I speak Cape Verdean Creole. So I did take a majority of Cape Verdean Creole families because I wanted to be able to have the conversations with families without there being a language barrier. And I thought that that was huge. And I also took a lot of students whose siblings that I have had in the past, just because I felt like the communication piece was already there for that. And then we just happened to have 3 sets of twins in 2nd grade this year at my school. So we were very intentional about keeping the twins in the same classroom. So there was some consistency. And I think that things like that are important. I know that in my son's school, they kept the same cohort of kids from the previous year together for this year so that kids didn't have to build new relationships. So I do think that we needed to be creative, and we needed to think with urgency in ways that we probably haven't been thinking as much about before. These are some things that we should have always been doing, but that we needed to do more of now.
Thank you, Leah. Do you talk with your, like how often do you talk with your students' families, by the way? Because I've heard this vary so much between teachers.
I think my students' families are my new best friends. We are having conversations more than ever before. And I do think that like educators around are doing that. I know that I used to have a lot of educator friends who'd be like, I don't give up my personal number. And I'm not suggesting that for everyone, but I think that a lot of those barriers have been broken down too. That families are calling my phone more than they have before, and I'm calling them more. Where before, I don't think that you should only engage with families during conferences, but I think that we saw that more often. And now we do really need to be intentional about having consistent conversations. Even, if I know that a family is home and in the next room, I'm calling them during class when I need to engage with a student. So the amount of contacts I have saved in my phone is different, and definitely using a variety of methods. I do Class Dojo, we do Seesaw, we do emails, but also trying not to overwhelm families. Because I know that there was a point that I was like, I'm getting way too many calls from my son's school. So we have to be able to find that balance, and you have to figure out what families need more of and when.
Great, thank you so much. Xiomara, I know you told me last night that you feel your nephew in Puerto Rico has had a better education than your sons. They're both remote, but can you talk about why that is?
No, sí, ayer lo estoy hablando con usted y estaba hablándole sobre las inquietudes que tengo como madre, las frustraciones que veo en mis hijos. Y sí he comparado, ahora que estoy aquí en Puerto Rico, he comparado la educación virtual en el estado de Massachusetts, en Boston, y veo la diferencia que hay aquí en Puerto Rico. Mi sobrino está estudiando aquí y veo que usan otra plataforma, Microsoft Teams, completamente diferente. Ahí tienen los estudiantes la mensajería para los padres, no como en Massachusetts que tenemos el email, tenemos que abrir otra aplicación para los padres, tenemos que estar en diferentes plataformas para saber qué está pasando.
Well, yes, basically, definitely, it's a growing concern for me, particular as a parent, because right now I am in Puerto Rico and I am comparing the way teaching is done here, because I see my nephew connecting to, his classes every day, and I see that they use a different curriculum. They have a different platform from Microsoft. So I think it's working better for them because they not only have classroom there, but also a way for families to communicate directly from that app or that platform.
Al niño le dan los materiales, el maestro le envía por email los materiales que se van a utilizar. El niño hace el uso de la escritura, le dan exámenes. Veo que la explicación que toma ese maestro para el tiempo que toma para explicarle, algo que me dan ganas de, como dije anteriormente, quedarme aquí, porque veo que mis hijos allá no están avanzando. Al contrario, ha sido un retraso. Y sabemos que esto es nuevo en nuestras vidas, pero el maestro ha tenido tiempo. Esa maestra que está hablando ahí, no recuerdo bien el nombre, pero me gustaría que ella fuera la maestra de mis hijos, que ella tuviera, que los maestros de mis hijos tuvieran esa comunicación con nosotros los padres, conmigo como padre. Le he dicho en varias ocasiones que necesito el material para poder ayudar a mi hijo. Él tiene que grabarse todo lo que dan durante la clase de 8:30 a 3. Tiene que grabarlo en su memoria. Cuando sale de las clases, tiene que aplicarlo en las tareas y no recuerda lo que dieron, porque no tenemos ninguna fuente. Yo no puedo ir a Zoom a ver lo que dio en esa clase. Él no me envía nada al material. No tenemos nada, nos sentimos perdidos, tanto ellos como yo.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I feel that, the way they're doing it is not working, because I see here in Puerto Rico, they are sending all of the assignments through email. So they have a reference material to go to just in case, they need to know what they're supposed to be doing. There are assignments as to like writing, math, and all of the other subjects. So I think that at this point, I am honestly contemplating the possibility of staying in Puerto Rico, because I see that, this is working better for the students. So it is really sad. And I would hope for Miss Leah to be one of my kids' teachers, because I see how involved and how concerned she is of her students. Because my son is, is having classes on Zoom, and sometimes in the afternoon, he's not able to remember what he was asked for to do on his homework. So he's not memorizing anything, and we don't have like a sort of reference to go to when it comes to like finishing his assignments.
Tengo unos puntos que encuentro que el sistema ha cometido un error grandísimo. Encuentro que las cámaras de estar encendidas, apagadas. Aquí al niño que tiene 9 años, mi niño que tiene 9 años, tiene que tener la cámara encendida, no la puede apagar. El niño que tiene 14 años, que está en la high school, en Charlestown High School, tiene que tenerla apagada o prendida. Es opcional. He preguntado varias veces, he mandado email al principal, he movido cielo y tierra, porque a él no, encuentro que no es profesional que un estudiante esté con la cámara apagada y que el maestro esté hablando y todos con la cámara apagada. Los estudiantes no se conocen entre sí, no hay ese diálogo, no hay esa dinámica entre los estudiantes para conocerse. Encuentro que ese es un fallo. Otra cosa es que las computadoras no están bloqueadas. Los niños entran a YouTube, los niños entran a Roblox, los niños juegan mientras están en clase. Otra cosa, los horarios. Encuentro que son, el grande entra muy temprano para hacer online, un horario de 7:30 a 1:30. Entra demasiado temprano. Y el pequeño está de 8:30 a 3 de la tarde conectado. Solamente 1 hora de almuerzo. Las computadoras tienen que bloquearlas para que los estudiantes no entren a otras páginas, a otros juegos, mayormente los pequeños que se distraen. Puedes continuar.
Gracias. Ada, can you tell us?
Yes, I have a few pointers that I feel that the system or the district is failing on when it comes to basically their cameras. My youngest has to be on camera just about all of the time, but my oldest has, the freedom of not turning on his camera. So I feel that, by doing that, he's not being responsible, and sometimes they're not being professional. They're not interacting and involving themselves as much as they should be doing it. So I believe that they should be some sort of requirements from them, and I think they also have to improve the way the web pages work, because I see that the kids are going into YouTube, Roblox, and probably playing and doing other things that they shouldn't be doing when they're in class. So I think that they need to improve on that. Also, I feel that the schedules are basically too long. My oldest, who's in high school, has to sign in from 7:30, sometimes until like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. My youngest starts at 8:30 until like 3. So I think there are 2 long periods of time for them to be connected and in front of a computer.
Gracias, Xiomara. Jason, can you talk about your thoughts on the camera policy? Because I know this is something that a lot of students and parents and teachers, like there's so much different thinking about this.
Yeah, the camera policy is a real challenge, and we, in our younger grades, actually up to about grade 4, kids keep their computers on almost all the time. It gets a little bit different in grade 5 and 6. The majority of our kids still keep their computers on, but there are some kids who will like turn them off, and our teachers will regularly make sure they're checking in with the students whose cameras are off. And if they're responding, then we know that there's a reason why they have it off. And oftentimes it's a reason that's legitimate. Like the families feel like, or the student feels like, having that look into their homes at this time is not appropriate. They may be in a home where it's very crowded, a lot of kids at work, and they feel more comfortable when they can be in a space that they're sharing with somebody else. But we do, regularly check with students. If the cameras are off, we do say, hey, can you please turn your camera on? Let me know you're doing okay. If we can get a click and a thumbs up and we see that they're doing the work that they need to be doing, and if they're participating, chat or verbally, then that's important. We want to play the kids, but the other is if a student doesn't have his computer on, if he doesn't have his camera on, I'm sorry, like it's not like there's something we can enforce and say you don't have your camera on, you're in trouble. Right? They're at home. We're here in school. Other teachers are at home, like teaching as well. So it's not a massive problem we have at our school, but we do look at our older kids and we do have to do reminders to once in a while. Hey, turn your camera on so we can see that you're doing this. Or can you check in the chat so we know you're engaged? Or looking at their work on Seesaw or in the classroom to make sure it's being done. So it is a real challenge, but there are some issues about some kids wanting to have their computers on at home that we do have to be respectful of.
Thank you, Jason. Christopher, how does it work in your school? Do you like when you can see your classmates' faces, or do you feel like it's better to be able to have your camera off?
I could say this along with many other people. I would definitely want to be able to have an experience somewhat close to being in person, and having cameras on really makes me feel a lot more comfortable in the classroom. We do have a cameras on policy in our school. However, there are exceptions for families who prefer that their students don't have it on, or if students convince their parents in some way that they feel for this reason they don't want to they shouldn't have their camera on. However, whenever I'm in the classroom, I try to encourage other people, especially in breakout rooms, to just try to turn their cameras on for a certain amount of time. I won't force them to turn it on for the entire class. That's not my job. However, if they could turn it on for at least 3 seconds, 5 seconds, maybe even 10, I'd feel more comfortable than just them having their screen blank.
And I know like it's so weird right now with this is how we communicate and connect with people through Zoom. Leah, I think you were telling me you do some really interesting things with motivating the kids, and then you give them a reward. Can you talk about, how you do that? Because the socialization aspect of second grade is obviously huge. So how do you give them that social time, but still make it into a motivator?
So my kids are always looking to earn lunch breaks, like virtual lunch breaks, where they can just stay on Zoom and talk to each other. So not, keeping your camera on, engaging in the conversation, being fully aware of classroom is a way to earn that. So a lot of times the kids don't want to leave the screen during the lunch, and we'll go into breakout rooms to have like lunch bunches, which is something that I would normally do in person and is really different now, but also more kids can earn it because I can use the breakout rooms to send 3 kids here, 4 friends here, and they will write in the chat who they want to be with, and they're always begging to stay on. And of course, there's times that I like have a meeting and I'm like, not today, but they love staying on Zoom in their lunch bunches, and I'll like pop back and forth checking on them. And sometimes honestly they're just on Roblox, like not even talking to each other, or playing on their phone on Roblox. I'm like, you guys don't need to be on Zoom to play with each other on Roblox. So I'm gonna turn the camera, I'm gonna send you guys away and come back after lunch. And then we also try to just encourage taking the screen time. So we have a big conversation when we come back from lunch. What did you do that was not on the screen, not with each other on Roblox or Minecraft, to have that conversation. So I do think that my students enjoy that.
That's great. Michelle, we all get Zoom fatigue even as adults. So I can't even imagine how hard it must be for younger people. When you're feeling unmotivated to like get back on Zoom classes, how do you handle that? And, is there anything that teachers and parents can do to help you, get more motivated?
I sort of just do it because you have to. So there's always that like I don't really have the option to be like, no, don't feel like going to school today, obviously. But I think when teachers allow for discussion in classes and allow students to answer instead of just teaching for like the whole block, taking a 10-minute break and then working on something, if throughout their lesson they allow students to ask questions and allow students to talk, it's a lot more engaging. And I think it's also a lot more helpful when the teacher is excited to teach and it feels like they really care about what they're teaching about. Because if a teacher seems like they don't want to be there and they don't want to be teaching, the students aren't going to want to learn. Like it's not going to feel as exciting as when the teacher cares about what they're teaching. So I think when teachers truly care about what they're teaching and really want their students to learn and allow their students to engage in discussions and conversations throughout the entire class period, it's really helpful.
Thank you, Michelle. So I'm going to go to some audience questions now. We have 2 that are kind of along the same lines that are more positive. So let's see how this goes. One person asked, for teachers and students, were there any positive surprises this year discovering new ways of teaching or learning? What are some of the pros? Did you learn anything new about yourself as a learner or an educator? And along that same line, someone asked, is there anything about this pandemic, remote teaching and learning that you think should continue? So Michelle, why don't you start? Yeah, and then we'll go to Christopher and Leah.
I think something positive that's come out of this is that for at least at my school, there's been a bit of less emphasis on grades, because I think a problem, especially in high school, is students feel like they're not really learning, they're just working to get a good grade, and that grades are all that matters, and students get very, very stressed about it. But when we went online, it was a lot less about grades and more about learning and stuff about ourselves, and obviously learning in school. So I think something that we could take from this is allowing students to not have to focus as much on grades and caring a bit more about their mental health and focusing more on their mental health, especially if it's mental health versus their grades. I think their mental health should be taken more care of than just having them focus on getting an A.
Christopher, is there anything that you feel like has been a positive of this,
I
not so
definitely
great
agree
experience?
with Michelle all the way. I definitely think that mental health should be something that all teachers look forward to focusing more on, because without knowing what students are feeling or what they're struggling, and it's just people are coming from different perspectives in this pandemic, and not knowing what people are going through really changes what the school environment, the school experience. And in this virtual environment, a lot of that has already been taken away. We haven't been able to have all the opportunities that normally we would have if we were in person. And so just things like maybe short one-on-one confidential talks, just to check in, could turn someone's entire day around.
Thank you, Christopher. Leah, is there anything positive that's come out of this for you?
I love what Christopher and Michelle were saying. I have been thinking a lot about just like the technology skills. My students know how to use computers in ways that they did not before. And that isn't just games. I'm learning a lot about computers, and they definitely are using computers in ways that I think is really beneficial for the way that the world is turning. And I also think that families are getting an inside peek into education that they've never had before. I'm in a younger grade, so I do have a lot of families in the background, and they are seeing what their children are learning firsthand, for those that are at home or like in completely different ways. And I think that that's important. And again, I do think that we have been engaging with family, at least from my point of view, I have been engaging with families more than I ever have. And I hope that that is something that continues after this. And I know for sure, like I've never had computers in my classroom, but there will, like, I can't imagine ever teaching again, even when this is over, without a computer at some point throughout the day, because you just never know now.
Thank you so much. So Jason, sort of off of the positive route for a minute, how has this experience been for your special education students, and how are they dealing with remote learning?
That's a good question. With students who have disabilities, one of the real challenges have been just, do they have access to the curriculum online? Are they able to access to get in front of their Chromebooks every day for the amount of time that's, that sometimes is required to get the work done? So we've had to have a lot of flexibility with our teachers to be able to work with our students with disabilities in different ways, whether it's, frequent visits to their house with materials that they can work on completely offline, whether it's like creating slightly different schedules so that they have more time to work in smaller groups or individually to make sure that their needs are being met. And it's a challenge if you have 15 kids in a Zoom call and a couple of students with disabilities who might be struggling with something. It's hard to do that in front of the group of 15. So the opportunity to pull into breakout rooms, to meet later on in smaller groups or even individually. So it's definitely been a challenge for our students with disabilities. We're really excited that we're one of the schools that's bringing students back on Monday, so we can try to make sure we start closing those gaps. We appreciate the work that families are doing to try to support their children, specifically our students with disabilities. But we know it's been a real challenge, and our teachers have been doing a lot, and our paraprofessionals, they've been really wonderful as well, as far as spending more time with our students who are struggling with the online learning. But students with disabilities have definitely been impacted in a larger way than almost all of our other groups of kids.
I know it's something I've been hearing a lot about as well, and we got a bunch of questions about that. There's a question about how schools are incorporating social and emotional learning into their lessons and virtual classes. Leah, can you talk about that part?
Yeah, I do definitely think that I've been way more intentional about making sure to include it, where I've always been big on social emotional learning, but it wasn't necessarily like that I would plan what my brain break was going to be. Like we would just do it in the moment when I felt like students need it. But we've been very intentional about having space for mindfulness and having space to do brain breaks in between, very intentional about setting up opportunities for kids to get up and move in different ways. I know in my school, we've also been very intentional about merging social emotional learning with social justice, so that students are having both of them together. And I think that also, when you're understanding who the student is, that's going to help you understand what they need.
Thank you. Xiomara, we have a question asking, how are things working for families that don't speak English as their first language? Can you talk about the communication that you've received and whether you feel like it's adequate?
En mi caso, con el pequeño, él toma clase, él está en la escuela Hurley, que es una escuela bilingüe, enseña una semana el español y otra semana el inglés. Con él he tenido más comunicación con el maestro de español.
So my youngest actually goes to the Hurley School, which is a bilingual school. 1 week they do Spanish, 1 week they do English. So I have been having more communication with that school, especially with the Spanish teacher.
Con mi otro hijo que está en la high school, todos son maestros que hablan el idioma inglés, y con ellos pues se me ha hecho un poquito difícil, pero estoy en comunicación con un disciplinario, Iván Quiñones, que él es de la escuela, y él es el que me notifica si Caleb entró a las clases, si entró tarde, si está haciendo las tareas, porque los maestros le notifican a él y él me notifica a mí.
So when it comes to my oldest son, who's in high school right now, I have been having a little bit more difficulties when it comes to like communicating. But what has happened is that he has a disciplinary teacher that, you know, usually notifies me if it's in class or if it's late or if anything is going on, because he is in constant communication with the teachers.
Pero no ha sido la idea, la que yo esperaba, pues no ha sido. Estoy de acuerdo con varios panelistas de este panel en que pues se deben de enfocar más en la salud emocional, porque como había hablado, los niños aprenden de una manera distinta, todos son diferentes, no todos aprenden de la misma manera, no se deben de enfocar en cuanto a las notas, sino a lo que siente ese estudiante, a lo que siente esa familia, y no básicamente por las notas.
Well, when it comes to me, it hasn't been all that great and it hasn't been ideal, but I think I agree with most of the panelists when they talk about, you know, focusing more in their emotional, social emotional health instead of like focusing on the grades, focusing on every student as an individual, so to be able to basically help them learn a little bit more.
Y en mi caso, pues ha sido, como le dije ayer, ha sido muchísimas cosas que sí no termino de hablar porque han sido muchas cosas que no son las correctas. Aquí veo maestros súper comprometidos con sus estudiantes, súper comprometidos con su labor, pero entiendo que la clave es el maestro. El maestro deben de darle talleres para que motive a ese estudiante, talleres de socioemocional, diferentes técnicas de cómo utilizar con los estudiantes. Deben de prepararlos más porque hay muchos que tienen que buscar pues información como cualquier persona buscaría, siendo cualquier profesión que ejerza, pero entiendo que a los maestros se les deben de dar más talleres, deben de ser más empáticos con los estudiantes, porque como decían, nadie sabe cada situación de cada familia. En mi caso, mis hijos están solos en mi casa, conectados. El de 14 está conectado, el de 9 también. El de 14 no me puede ayudar al pequeño mientras yo regreso de trabajar. Tengo muchas dificultades con esto. A veces la maestra he tenido que hablar con ella. Si algo pasa en mi casa, si usted ve que mi niño pasa algo aquí, ellos están solitos, déjeme saber. Si usted ve algo por medio de la cámara, déjeme saber, porque ellos están solos durante las clases.
Yeah, like I said, in my case, there's have been many issues that that are not proper, that are not correct, that hasn't been working. So I feel that just the way one of the teachers said that she's very involved and she's very in communication with not only the students but also the parents. So I feel that they're doing their part, they're doing their role at their best. So I feel that the rest of the teachers should have any type of, I don't know, training, maybe a workshop to help them to better understand each student so they can help them in a better way, to be more empathetic with whatever issues are going on in their houses, because I understand not everyone's situation and circumstances are the same. So in my case, I have to work, so my kids have to be at home by themselves. Sometimes I have to basically ask the teacher to let me know if something is going on, if something is happening in the background that I should be aware of. So I understand that not everyone's case is the same.
Leah, and I know we only have 6 more minutes, so let's try to keep it quick so we can get to a few more questions. But Leah, I would love to hear what you think.
What Ziamara is saying is just really breaking my heart. I know, like, from a parent perspective, like my son's school was doing deliveries from like a 3 to a 5. And I was like, no working parent is ever going to be able to pick up materials from 3 to 5. And even though that was something that I was able to do because I'm working from home, like it really upset me for other parents in that classroom who in reality could not. And so that's a conversation I had to have with the school, but I have the access and means to do that. So I do really think that we need to be thinking about ways that we're going to engage and motivate families, and also making sure that we're going to them. It shouldn't always rely on the families to come to us. And also just have to throw in the fact that this is where like funding public education is really important, because all of these things that we needed before the virus, and we need to continue to do that. We should be able to provide materials for students, one-on-one materials at all times that could be going home. We should be able to have translators in the building. We should have counselors, all of these things that is frustrating Ziamara and that isn't working with online learning are things that we should have always had. And even just thinking about, right now we're in this situation where I would love if I had another teacher in my classroom to help in breakout rooms, and to give interventions when the kids it's there. We might be widening the achievement gap right now. But these are all things that we need before the virus, and why we should really be thinking about how we fund public education.
Christopher, you were raising your hand. What did you want to say?
Really quickly, from a kid's perspective, it is also important that teachers don't treat this like as if it's something that as if they're not in a stressful time. Kids are struggling just as much as the teachers are in this time, and for teachers to not think about this as the exact same way the kids are, or for them to not treat this the same or something extra, is something that really concerns me and probably most other adults in the community.
Thank you, Christopher. This, I guess, would be for Jason. Are you guys doing anything to address the missed informal social experiences that students have in schools, such as walking in the halls between classes or going to lunch together?
Yeah, so we try to do some things around the school to make it as, quote, normal as we can. We have every morning we start the day as a whole school community. We get together and it's kind of a nice time. We talk about, like, it's pretty loud on Zoom at that time. We want the kids to be loud. They're seeing each other. They're saying hi. We do the pledge. We do our school pride pledge. We have guest speakers come in, but the kids get time during that to see each other and see kids across grade that they usually don't see. At the end of the week, we try to do grade level things. So like the 5th grade kids, even if they're in different classes, can get together and do some fun Friday activities. We try to do like things across classrooms. So kids not only get to see the kids are in the Zoom with every day, but across different grade levels. Particularly their own grade level, but other grade levels as well. It is a real challenge to give the kids a chance to socialize and find things to do. But we've done, online dance parties. We have a trivia competition coming up. We're doing an open mic night. We've done virtual field trips to Disney World. Like, we've done all these things as a community. We invite kids and they love to come on. Virtual field trips obviously aren't as much fun as the real thing, but when they get to be with kids from the school and see each other and talk to each other and laugh together, it makes a big difference. It's not as good as the real thing, but we think it's helping with kids to be able to connect. We want to keep doing more though. And I think that it's important that we continue to do more because it's going to help address a lot of these social emotional issues that kids have. of not being able to connect in person. So, you know, we're trying to do a lot, but we know we have to do more.
Thank you, Jason. Leah, for younger learners, how do you strike a balance between asking them to be on mute and having the microphone on, keeping a quiet voice and talk? There seems to be significantly less time for young learners to practice communication and conversation because of the nature of Zoom, which prevents multiple audio sources at once. This developmental time comes once and has set up a foundation for education. So it's so important.
I think what Michelle said was really important and on it is that we have to be able to provide breakout rooms with strong prompts where children know what they're doing. I'm very intentional about my breakout rooms, pairing students who might not talk as much with students who do so that they can rely on each other, and also giving those opportunities to ask open-ended questions where students can communicate. I'm not going to just read a book to the student. I'm going to read the book and ask questions and make sure that they're having opportunities to speak. And I also just think like having conversations that matter to them. My students and I, we just finished a unit on schools around the world, and that was really important to them in these times because they're learning different. And we had really good, strong conversations about school not having to be in this physical space and how we can still learn together. And they were very active about muting. And just to follow up on what Jason said too, I think during virtual field trips, I always just let my students be unmuted. They want to laugh about the movie that they're seeing, or they want to talk to each other. And that's like more of a low key, you can do this type, which is something that I would do in the classroom too. Like, yeah, you have to raise your hand, but there are certain times in the classroom where you can just talk, and we do need to have those opportunities for kids.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we are actually at 5 o'clock and this flew by so fast. I'm gonna bring Marcos back to close us out, but thank you guys so much for joining us, and let's hear from Marcos.
Awesome, thank you so much, Naomi. And thank you, Xiomara, Jason, Leah, Michelle, and Naomi for leading us in this important conversation today. There was so much wisdom that you all shared with us. I really appreciate it. One of my takeaways is the need to focus on social emotional well-being and making time for connection and empathy. I really appreciate, Christopher, you saying, what encouraging teachers to ask students, what's going on in their lives and what do they need, and many of you sharing that teachers should focus on more on mental health because we know that students are struggling just as much as anyone else, and that human connection, that short one-on-one connections could really mean a lot to them. Another thing that I took away from today's conversation is the need to engage our families more regularly and not limit it to how we've done it in the past, and really think about how we maintain those ways of engagement when the pandemic ends, because this more regular connection is really, I think, really helping our students and our families succeed. So as we continue these conversations about virtual learning over the course of the school year, I hope that we keep these important stories that you all have shared, these experiences with us, and continue to center our young people, especially our Black, Brown, and Indigenous young people whose voices, experience, gifts, talents, and needs should be at the core of every decision that we make. So thank you all who took the time to join us today. We hope this conversation was helpful. We sincerely appreciate your engagement in this very important topic, and we wish you all the very best. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you so much. And I really want to thank our panelists. You guys were amazing. You did so well. Xiomara, did you want to say something? Were you just waving? We appreciate you guys. And you, all the audience members will receive an email shortly that will have some links to our newsletter to sign up, some of our coverage. And this panel will be recorded and posted on the Globe's website, and probably on YouTube too, so you can find it there. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you.